Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Sophia's apartment in Arlington smelled of freshly brewed coffee and the lavender perfume she always spritzed on her couch cushions. It was one of those April Saturdays when Virginia's spring whispered promises through the open windows, carrying the sweet scent of cherry blossoms blooming on the street. Sophia adjusted her teal bikini for the third time, watching her reflection in the bedroom mirror. The golden afternoon light filtered through the white curtains, creating the perfect setting for the selfie she planned to send to Olivia, her best friend since college. Finally, she murmured to herself, admiring how the new bikini flattered her silhouette. She'd saved up for weeks to buy it, and now, with summer vacation approaching, she wanted Olivia's opinion before taking it on the beach trip they'd planned. Sophia positioned her phone carefully, finding the perfect angle that captured the confidence she felt in that moment. The camera's click echoed in the apartment's silence. She smiled, seeing the result. She looked radiant with her auburn hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, and a genuine smile that conveyed the joy she felt. Without thinking twice, she opened WhatsApp and looked for Olivia's name in her contact list. Her fingers danced quickly across the screen, selecting the photo and typing a message. "What do you think? Worth it for Myrtle Beach?" The sending sound, that familiar whoosh, filled the air. Sophia placed the phone on her dresser and went to the kitchen to make a snack, feeling satisfied with herself. Moments like these were rare, of pure self-confidence, especially after the turbulent last few months at work. 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed. Sophia rushed to grab it, eager for Olivia's usual enthusiastic reaction, but when she looked at the screen, her heart stopped. The reply wasn't from Olivia. "Ethan Caldwell, CEO. I believe this message was sent by mistake. Please be more careful with future communications. Have a good weekend, Sophia." The world seemed to stop. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face as she reread the message, hoping it was some kind of nightmare. Her hands trembled as she checked the conversation history and confirmed the unthinkable. She had sent the intimate photo directly to Ethan Caldwell, her boss of only 3 weeks. No, she whispered, letting herself fall onto the couch. The soft fabric that once comforted her now felt rough against her skin. How had this happened? She was always so careful about these things. Ethan Caldwell, the man who commanded Caldwell Consulting Group with an iron fist, 35 years old, single, impeccably dressed, and intimidatingly intelligent. Since Sophia had started working as an administrative assistant, they'd barely exchanged more than 2 direct sentences. He was the type of man who spoke little, observed much, and never showed any emotion other than the coldest professional efficiency. Sophia reread his message, analyzing every word. I believe this message was sent by mistake. The cutting formality was typical of him, but there was something in his word choice that intrigued her. He hadn't said obviously it was an error or delete my number. He had said I believe as if there were room for doubt. And then there was the part about being more careful with future communications. That sounded almost like protective advice. Or was she reading too much into it? Sophia ran her fingers through her hair trying to process the situation. What bothered her most wasn't just Riggs the embarrassment. It was the fact that Ethan had seen the photo and his first reaction had been to respond so controlled. Any other man would have reacted with surprise, maybe even some uncomfortable joke, but Ethan, he had responded as if it were just another work email that needed to be redirected. This made her wonder what kind of man was Ethan Caldwell really. In the 3 months since he'd taken over the company after his father's retirement, Sophia had observed his meticulous routine, his always punctual meetings, the way his steel-gray eyes seemed to catalog every detail around him. But she had never thought of him as a man. He had always been just the boss, a distant and unreachable figure. Now suddenly there was an unplanned intimacy between them. He had seen a side of her that no one at the office would ever see, and for some inexplicable reason, this made her more nervous than it should. Sophia looked at the phone again, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Should she respond, apologize profusely, pretend nothing had happened? His message had been so definitive, so final, but it had also left the door slightly open to something she couldn't identify. The sun was beginning to set outside, tinting the apartment with golden and orange tones. Sophia closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to imagine facing Ethan on Monday. How would she manage to look into his eyes knowing he had seen every curve of her body? How would she pretend nothing had changed when everything had changed? But perhaps the most unsettling question was why was a part of her, a small and dangerous part, curious to find out if something had really changed for him, too. The phone buzzed again in her hands, and Sophia almost dropped it. But this time it was Olivia. "Where's that photo you promised me?" Sophia looked at the message and laughed, a somewhat hysterical sound that echoed through the empty apartment. If Olivia knew the photo had ended up in the hands of Washington, D.C.'s most intimidating boss, she'd probably have a heart attack. As night fell over Arlington, Sophia remained on the couch, holding her phone and wondering if a simple slip of the finger had just complicated her life forever. Or if it had opened a door she didn't even know existed. Monday arrived like an inevitable storm. Sophia woke up at 5:00 the morning, 2 hours before her alarm, with her stomach in knots and her heart racing. The apartment was shrouded in the pre-dawn darkness of Washington, D.C., but she could no longer close her eyes. The memory of the accidentally sent photo hung over her like a dense cloud, heavy with embarrassment, and a strange anticipation she preferred not to examine too closely. The hot shower did little to calm her nerves. Sophia carefully chose a charcoal blazer and cream blouse, the most conservative armor she owned, as if she could erase the image Ethan now had of her. As she applied neutral lipstick with trembling hands, she watched her reflection in the mirror. "You can do this," she murmured to herself. "It's just another day at work." But it wasn't, and they both knew it. "You can do this," she murmured to herself. But it wasn't, and they both knew it. "You can do this," she murmured to herself. Sophia took a deep breath before crossing the marble lobby, her heels echoing in the morning silence. "Good morning, Sophia. Are you okay? You look a bit pale." Olivia greeted her cheerfully from reception. Sophia forced a smile quickly, heading to her desk. Maybe if she kept busy, she could avoid any encounter with Ethan until she could better process the situation. But the universe had other plans. "Sophia." The deep, familiar voice made every muscle in her body tense. She slowly looked up and found Ethan standing beside her desk, impeccable as always, in a navy suit that highlighted his light eyes. There was something different in his posture, an almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders. A calculated pause before speaking. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," she managed to say, her voice coming out higher than normal. "I need you to review these contracts before the 10 meeting," he said, placing a folder on her desk. His fingers briefly brushed hers when she reached for the documents, and Sophia felt an electric current run through her skin. His eyes remained on hers for a second longer than professionally necessary, and Sophia— "Yes, sir." An almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Next time you're sending photos to your friends, maybe it's better to double-check the recipient." Heat rose up Sophia's neck like a wave. "I apologize again for—" "Don't apologize," he interrupted, his voice low enough for only her to hear. It was enlightening, and with that he walked away, leaving Sophia with her heart beating erratically and a burning question. Enlightening how exactly? The rest of the morning passed in a fog of forced productivity. Sophia focused on the contracts with an almost violent intensity, grateful to have something that demanded her full attention. But every time she heard footsteps in the hallway, her body tensed. Anticipating Ethan's presence, during lunch, she chose to stay at her desk, pretending to be too busy to go out. That's when she realized she wasn't being paranoid. Ethan really was watching her more than usual. Through the glass wall of his office, she caught him looking in her direction several times. When their eyes met, he didn't immediately look away as any embarrassed person would. Instead, he held her gaze for a few charged seconds before returning to what he was doing. Through the glass wall of his office, she caught him looking in her direction several times. "What's going on between you two?" "Nothing," Sophia replied too quickly. "Why do you think something's going on?" "Because in 3 months of working here, I've never seen Ethan Caldwell look at anyone for more than 5 seconds unless he was firing them." Olivia leaned in, curious. "But today, he's watching you like you're a puzzle he's trying to solve." Sophia felt her stomach knot up. That was exactly how she felt, too, like something fundamental had changed between them, something neither of them knew how to name or handle. At 3:00 the afternoon, Ethan left his office carrying his briefcase. As he passed Sophia's desk, he stopped. "I need you to prepare the monthly report for the board. Can you stay late today?" It was a routine question, but the way he asked it, with a new intensity in his voice, his eyes fixed on hers, made it seem anything but routine. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell. No problem." "Great." He hesitated for a moment, as if he were going to say something else, but then simply nodded and headed toward the elevator. Sophia watched him leave, noticing for the first time how his broad shoulders filled out his suit, how his steps were confident and determined. There was a predatory elegance in his movements that she had never noticed before, or maybe she had never allowed herself to notice. When the office began to empty at the end of the day, Sophia found herself alone with her thoughts and the strange energy that had been hanging in the air since morning. The report Ethan had requested would normally take 2 hours, but she had been working on it for 4 hours, reviewing every comma, every number, as if her life depended on perfection. At 8 at night, the light in Ethan's office was still on. Sophia gathered her courage and knocked on the glass door. "Come in," his voice echoed from inside. Ethan's office was a reflection of him, minimalist, elegant, with an impressive view of the city. He was behind his desk, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. There was something devastatingly attractive about this more relaxed version of him. "The report is ready," Sophia said, placing the documents on the desk. "I reviewed all the numbers 3 times. Thank you." He looked up at her, and for the first time since they'd met, Sophia saw something beyond cold professionalism in his gaze. There was warmth there, curiosity, and something more dangerous that she couldn't identify. "Sophia, yes. About the weekend," he began, then stopped, running his hand through his dark hair. "You know, I can't pretend it didn't happen." Sophia's heart raced. "I know it was completely inappropriate." It wasn't inappropriate," he interrupted, standing up and walking around the desk. Suddenly, he was very close, and Sophia could smell his masculine cologne, something spicy and sophisticated that made her head spin. It was unexpected. "Mr. Caldwell." Ethan," he said softly. "When we're alone, you can call me Ethan." The name left her lips like a whisper. "Ethan." Something shifted in the air between them. The tension that had been building all day finally had a name, a tangible form. Sophia felt like she was on the edge of a precipice, and Ethan was both the danger and the only thing that could save her from the fall. "I'm leaving now," she said, taking a step back, but her eyes remained fixed on his broom. "Of course," he agreed, but didn't move to let her pass. "Sophia, yes, be careful going home. It's late." It was a simple, common concern, but the way he said it, with an intensity that suggested her safety, mattered to him in a way that went beyond professional courtesy, made Sophia's heart race again. As she headed for the door, Sophia could feel Ethan's eyes on her back, burning through the conservative blazer she had chosen as armor. In the elevator, she finally allowed her shoulders to relax, but one question echoed in her mind: what exactly had started between them? And more importantly, where would it lead? When the elevator doors closed, Sophia didn't see Ethan still standing at his office window, watching her until she disappeared into the Washington night with an expression that mixed desire, concern, and something he himself wasn't ready to admit yet. The Caldwell Consulting Group cafeteria buzzed with the typical energy of lunch hour. Sophia sat at her usual table near the windows, absent-mindedly picking at her Greek salad while pretending to read a report on her tablet. In reality, her thoughts were completely consumed by the events of the past week. Ethan's intense stares, the way he had said her name in the empty office, the electric tension that now hung between them like a storm about to break. Sophia sat at her usual table near the windows, absent-mindedly picking at her Greek salad while pretending to read a report on her tablet. Sophia looked up and found a tall man with curly brown hair and an infectious smile. He appeared to be about 25, wearing a light gray shirt that highlighted his hazel eyes. There was something refreshingly uncomplicated about his appearance, a carefree youth that contrasted dramatically with Ethan's sophisticated intensity. "No, you can sit." Sophia smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Are you new here, Jordan Hayes?" He extended his hand with a smile that probably melted hearts all over Washington, D.C. "I started yesterday as an intern in the marketing department, and you must be Sophia Bennett, the most talked-about administrative assistant in the building." Sophia blushed slightly. "Most talked about? I hope it's for professional reasons." "Definitely." Jordan laughed, but there was a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Everyone comments on how you managed to keep everything running perfectly, even with Mr. Caldwell's impossible schedule. Must be quite a job." "It has its challenges," Sophia admitted, taking a fork full of salad. "But it's interesting, Ethan. I mean, Mr. Caldwell is very demanding, but fair." Jordan caught the hesitation in the name, and his smile widened. "Ah, so you're close enough to use first names? Interesting." Before Sophia could respond, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Her entire body tensed before she even turned around to confirm her suspicions. Ethan stood a few meters away, his lunch tray in his hands, but his eyes weren't on the food. They were fixed on Jordan with an intensity that would make a polar bear retreat. "Mr. Caldwell," Sophia said, her voice coming out higher than normal. "This is Jordan Hayes, the new marketing intern." Jordan immediately stood up, extending his hand with professional enthusiasm. "It's an honor to meet you, sir. I'm very excited to work here." Ethan looked at the extended hand for a moment before shaking it briefly. "Hayes, welcome to the company." His voice was cutting professional, but Sophia could detect an underlying coldness that hadn't been there before. "I hope you'll maintain the standards we expect here." "Absolutely, sir," Jordan replied, apparently oblivious to the tension in the air. "Actually, I was just talking with Sophia about how impressive her efficiency is. You're lucky to have such a competent assistant." Something dangerous glinted in Ethan's eyes. "Yes, Sophia is indispensable." The way he pronounced her name with a subtle but unmistakable possessiveness made Sophia's stomach knot. "Speaking of which, Sophia, I need you to review the Thompson and Partners contracts before 2. It's urgent." Sophia checked her watch. It was 12:45. That would give her only an hour and 15 minutes, half the time she normally needed for a complete review. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell. They'll finish lunch right now. No rush," Jordan interjected with a charming smile. "Sophia, if you want, I could help with the review. I interned at a law firm last year, so I have experience with contracts." The silence that followed was so thick, Sophia felt like she could cut it with a knife. Ethan didn't say a word, but the way his fingers tightened around the tray revealed exactly what he thought about Jordan's offer. "Thanks, Jordan, but those contracts are confidential," Sophia said quickly, trying to ease the tension. "Company protocol?" "Of course, I understand perfectly." Jordan nodded, but his smile remained unwavering. "Maybe we could have lunch together tomorrow. I'd love to get to know the company better through your perspective." Sophia felt the weight of Ethan's gaze on her like a physical burn. Well, I usually eat lunch at my desk, so coffee after work then," Jordan persisted, clearly not picking up on the danger signals in the air. "I know a great place in DuPont Circle. Sophia has responsibilities that frequently extend beyond business hours." Ethan intervened, his voice cutting like ice. "I can't guarantee she'll have free time for social commitments." The words "social commitments" came out of his mouth as if they were something distasteful. Jordan finally seemed to catch the tension, his eyes moving between Sophia and Ethan with new understanding. "Of course, I understand," Jordan said, but there was a determination in his voice that suggested he wouldn't give up so easily. "Well, Sophia, if you ever have free time, it would be a pleasure. And Mr. Caldwell, thank you for the welcome." Jordan walked away with one last smile for Sophia, leaving a cloud of tension in his wake. Ethan remained standing for a moment, watching the young man join a group of other interns on the other side of the cafeteria. "He seems persistent," Ethan said, his voice loaded with barely disguised disapproval. "He's just being friendly," Sophia defended, though something inside her warmed at Ethan's obvious jealousy. "It's his first day. Friendly." Ethan repeated the word as if he were testing its taste. "Is that what you call it?" Sophia turned to face him completely. "What do you mean by that?" For a moment, Ethan's professional mask slipped, and Sophia saw something raw and primitive in his eyes. "I mean that men like Jordan Hayes don't offer help out of generosity, Sophia. They have specific motivations." "And what motivations would those be?" she asked, her heart racing at the intensity in his voice. Ethan leaned slightly toward her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. His cologne, spicy and masculine, enveloped her senses, the same motivations any man would have looking at you. The comment left her speechless. There was a raw honesty in his words that hit her like a punch to the stomach. Ethan wasn't just showing professional jealousy. There was something personal, possessive, that made her pulse race dangerously. "Ethan," she whispered, forgetting where they were. The way she said his name, soft, intimate, loaded with emotion, made something contract in his eyes. For a moment, Sophia thought he might say something more, something that would change everything between them. There was something personal, possessive, that made her pulse race dangerously. "The contracts will be on your desk in 10 minutes, he said, his voice returning to its usual neutral tone. "And Sophia, yes, in the future, if you need help with anything work-related, come directly to me. There's no need to involve third parties." With that, he walked away, leaving Sophia alone with her racing heart and a growing certainty Jordan Hayes had just become the catalyst for something that had been brewing between her and Ethan for weeks. And from the expression on Ethan's face as he watched Jordan, Sophia suspected things were about to get much more complicated. As she quickly finished her lunch, Sophia couldn't get Ethan's words out of her mind. The same motivations any man would have looking at you. Had it been an admission, a confession disguised as an observation, and more importantly, what would she do with this information now that she had it? Across the cafeteria, Jordan waved at her with a confident smile, clearly not intimidated by his encounter with Ethan. Sophia waved back politely, but her mind was already elsewhere, going up to the 15th floor, where an apparently controlled CEO was fighting against feelings he could no longer deny. And for the first time since she'd sent that photo by mistake, Sophia wondered if maybe, just maybe, it hadn't been a mistake after all. Thursday afternoon was gray and heavy when Ethan appeared at Sophia's desk, with an expression she hadn't yet learned to completely decipher. There was something different in his posture. A controlled tension that made the air around him vibrate with unspoken energy. He carried an old silver key in his hands, turning it between his fingers with a nervousness that contrasted with his usual composure. "Sophia, I need your help with something," he said, his voice lower than normal. The office was nearly empty. Most employees had left early to enjoy the start of the weekend. Next week's audit will require a complete reorganization of the old files. I need you to help me separate the documents by year and category. Sophia looked up from her computer, noticing how he avoided direct eye contact. In the past few days, since the incident with Jordan in the cafeteria, there had been a palpable tension between them, an electric current that seemed to intensify with each interaction. "Of course, where are the files?" she asked, saving the document she was working on. "In the basement, archive room B12. Ethan hesitated as if weighing his next words. "It's work that will take several hours. If you'd prefer to leave it for tomorrow." "No problem." Sophia stood up, grabbing her blazer. "The sooner we finish, the better." The elevator going down to the basement was small and antiquated, forcing them to stand closer than Sophia had prepared for. Ethan's cologne, that spicy and sophisticated blend that was now associated with sleepless nights and dangerous thoughts, filled the confined space. She could feel the heat emanating from his body, see the tension in his jaw through her peripheral vision. "How are you adapting to the new colleagues?" Ethan asked suddenly, his voice loaded with meaning that wasn't related just to the superficial question. Sophia knew exactly who he was referring to. "Jordan is nice," she replied carefully, "very enthusiastic about the work." Enthusiastic. Ethan repeated the word with a tone that suggested he had his own theories about Jordan's enthusiasm. "And you? Are you enjoying the extra attention?" The question caught her off guard. There was a vulnerability behind the apparent casualness that made her heart race. "I don't understand what you mean." The elevator stopped with a gentle jolt, but Ethan didn't immediately move to exit. Instead, he turned to face her, and Sophia found herself trapped between his body and the metal wall of the elevator. The proximity was intoxicating and dangerous. "I mean that I've noticed how young Hayes finds reasons to walk by your desk at least 5 times a day." Ethan's voice was low, almost a growl. How he always has questions that could easily be answered by anyone else in the department. Sophia felt heat rise up her neck. "Maybe he's interested in you, Sophia." Ethan said this as an indisputable fact, his steel-gray eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her tremble. "And I wonder if the interest is mutual." The elevator doors opened, breaking the charged moment. Ethan stepped away and exited, leaving Sophia with her heart racing and a burning question on her lips that she didn't have the courage to ask. Why did this matter so much to him? Archive room B12 was small and poorly lit, with metal shelves that extended from floor to ceiling, filled with dusty boxes and folders yellowed by time. The air smelled of old paper and had a stuffy quality that made every sound seem amplified. When Ethan closed the door behind them, Sophia felt like they had entered a world separate from the rest of the company. "Where do we start?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the charged atmosphere. Ethan pointed to a shelf at the back of the room. "Those 1,990 seconds files need to be separated by quarter. It's meticulous work." They worked in silence for some time, the only sounds being the rustling of papers and the occasional creak of metal shelves, but Sophia was painfully aware of Ethan's every movement. The way his muscles contracted under his shirt when he stretched his arm to reach a high shelf, how his breathing changed when they accidentally bumped into each other in the confined space. "You avoided my question," Ethan said suddenly, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Sophia stopped organizing the documents. Which question? Whether the interest is mutual? He turned to face her, leaning against the shelf. The dim light from the fluorescent lamp created shadows on his face, accentuating the angles of his cheekbones and the strong line of his jaw. Jordan has made his intentions clear. Flowers on your desk yesterday. Daily coffee invitations. Are you watching me? Sophia asked, more curious than offended. An ironic smile touched Ethan's lips. Hard not to notice when it happens right in front of my office. They were only a meter apart now, and Sophia could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight shadow of stubble that had appeared throughout the day. There was something devastatingly attractive about this slightly disheveled version of him. And if it were mutual, she asked, surprising herself with her own courage, would that change anything? The question hung between them like an unexploded bomb. They were only a meter apart now, and Sophia could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight shadow of stubble that had appeared throughout the day. It would change everything, he said, his voice rough with raw honesty, because I couldn't pretend anymore, that I don't think about you every moment of the day, that I don't replay that image in my mind every time you enter my office, that I don't lie awake at night imagining. He stopped abruptly, running his hand through his hair in frustration. Imagining what? Sophia whispered, her heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. Ethan moved closer, placing one hand on the shelf beside her head. Now she could feel the heat of his body, see the different shades of gray in his eyes, imagining what it would be like if that photo hadn't been a mistake. If you had sent it to me because you wanted me to see it. The air between them was charged with electricity. Sophia felt like she was on a precipice, and a dangerous part of her wanted to jump. And what if I told you it wasn't completely a mistake? The words came out before she could stop them. What if part of me wondered what would happen if I sent it to you? Ethan's eyes visibly darkened. Sophia, is it wrong, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, to feel this tension between us, to lose sleep thinking about you the same way you think about me? Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, as if fighting something powerful inside him. When he opened them again, there was a fierce determination there. You want to know what's wrong, he said, his voice low and intense. It's you working 5 meters away from me every day, and me having to pretend you're just my assistant. It's having to watch other men flirt with you when all I want is what? Sophia asked, barely able to breathe. Instead of answering with words, Ethan raised his free hand and gently touched her cheek. The touch was like a spark sending waves of heat through her entire body. To mark my territory, he said, his voice rough, to make it clear that you're not available to the Jordans of the world. And how would you do that? Sophia asked, knowing she was playing with fire, but unable to resist. The smile that crossed Ethan's face was dangerous and promised things that would turn her world upside down. Do you really want to know? Before Sophia could answer, the sound of footsteps in the hallway made them quickly step apart. The door opened and an elderly security guard appeared. Sorry to bother you. Just checking if there's still anyone in the building. No problem, Roberto, Ethan replied, his voice perfectly controlled, though Sophia could see the tension in his shoulders. We're almost finished here. When the security guard left, the moment had been broken, but the tension remained. Sophia and Ethan finished the work in a charged silence. Each accidental touch, each exchanged glance intensifying the fire that had been lit between them. In the elevator back up, Sophia finally found the courage to ask the question that was burning in her mind. Ethan, what happens now? He looked at her for a long moment before answering. Now you go home and think very carefully about what you want, Sophia, because once we cross that line, there's no going back. The elevator doors opened on her floor, but Sophia hesitated. And if I already know what I want, she asked. The smile Ethan gave her made her stomach flip. Then tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day. As Sophia walked to her desk to get her things, she could feel Ethan's eyes burning into her back. One thing was clear, the line between professional and personal had been irrevocably blurred, and there was no longer any way to pretend that what existed between them was just a common work dynamic. The question now wasn't whether they would cross that line, but when, and what the consequences would be when they did. The Plaza Hotel rose majestically against Manhattan's night sky, its golden windows reflecting the lights of the city that never sleeps. Sophia nervously adjusted her sapphire necklace as she observed the hotel's grand entrance through the taxi window. The emerald dress she had chosen for Caldwell Consulting's annual event was elegant and sophisticated, a velvet piece that embraced her curves impeccably, with a subtle neckline that suggested without revealing too much. First time at the plaza? Asked the driver, noticing how she observed the historic building with admiration. First time anywhere like this, Sophia admitted, paying the fare with slightly trembling hands. 2 weeks had passed since the incident in the archive room, and the tension between her and Ethan had reached almost unbearable proportions. Every interaction at the office was loaded with undertones. Every exchanged glance an unfulfilled promise. The plaza's lobby was even more impressive than she had imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ornate ceiling, and the cream-colored marble reflected the soft lights as if it were a polished jewel. Sophia felt like she had entered a fairy tale, still not completely believing she was there. Sophia. The deep, familiar voice made her heart jump. She turned and felt the air escape from her lungs. Ethan was devastatingly elegant in an impeccable black tuxedo, the bow tie perfectly aligned, his dark hair combed back revealing his aristocratic features completely. But it was his eyes that left her speechless. They traveled over her figure slowly and deliberately, a masculine appreciation that made every nerve ending in her body awaken. "You look," he began, then stopped, shaking his head as if words were inadequate. Stunning heat rose up Sophia's neck. "Thank you. You look very elegant, too." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the movement of the lobby around them seeming to slow down. Sophia could feel the familiar tension building between them, that electricity that was now a constant in their interactions. "Come." Ethan offered his arm, a gallant gesture that made her feel like a princess. "I'll introduce you to the main clients. Your presence here tonight isn't just protocol. You know the account details better than anyone." The ballroom was magnificent, with its Corinthian columns and golden decoration that seemed to have come from a European palace. Round tables were elegantly arranged around a polished dance floor, and an orchestra played soft jazz on the stage. The air was perfumed with expensive floral arrangements, and the sophisticated murmur of business conversations mixed with aristocratic laughter. "Ethan." A confident male voice cut through the noise. Sophia turned to see a tall man approaching, silver hair, impeccable suit, and a smile that radiated charm and power. "What a joy to see you here, Marcus." Ethan greeted the man with a handshake that seemed more formal than friendly. "Sophia, this is Marcus Vaughn, director of our New York branch. Marcus, Sophia Bennett, my administrative assistant, the famous Sophia." Marcus smiled, taking her hand and kissing it chivalrously. "I've heard a lot about your legendary efficiency. Ethan never stops praising your work." Sophia felt Ethan tense beside her. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Vaughn." "Marcus, please," he insisted, holding her hand a little longer than necessary. "And may I say that Ethan didn't mention how beautiful you are." "Vaughn." "Marcus, please," he insisted, holding her hand a little longer than necessary. She could feel the tension radiating from him like heat. "Of course. Of course," Marcus laughed, but his eyes remained fixed on Sophia. "But everyone deserves to experience New York's energy at least once. Sophia, have you visited our Park Avenue branch? I'd love to show you the facilities personally." "That's very kind." But Sophia began. "Actually," Ethan interrupted, placing a possessive hand on her back, "Sophia has a very busy schedule. She'd hardly have time for tours." The tension between the two men was palpable. Sophia felt like she was at the center of a silent dispute she didn't completely understand. There was history between Ethan and Marcus, a rivalry that transcended business. "Well," Marcus smiled, but there was a coldness in his eyes. "Now, if you change your mind, Sophia, my invitation remains open. I know how to recognize talent when I see it, and I'm sure we could offer opportunities that might not be available elsewhere." With that, he walked away, but not before giving Sophia one last appreciative look that made Ethan's jaw visibly contract. "Old friend?" Sophia asked, trying to keep her tone light. "Something like that?" Ethan murmured, his hand still burning on her back. Marcus has a tendency to covet things that belong to others. The choice of words made Sophia's heart race. Things that belong to others. Ethan looked at her intensely. People important to others. The rest of the night passed in a fog of introductions, business conversations, and occasional dancing. Sophia found herself impressed with how Ethan navigated effortlessly through elite social circles. But she was even more impressed with how he kept a protective hand on her back or waist throughout the night. A silent but unmistakable claim. During dinner, Marcus made a point of sitting at their table, directing most of his attention to Sophia. He talked about Broadway theater, Manhattan's best restaurants, and subtly suggested she consider a change of scenery. "Sophia would be a valuable addition to any team," Marcus said, raising his champagne glass in a toast. "Intelligent, elegant, clearly capable of handling complex situations." Sophia noticed how Ethan's fingers tightened around his wine glass, his knuckles turning white. "Sophia isn't interested in changes," Ethan said, his voice dangerously low. "She's very satisfied with her current position. Satisfaction can be temporary." Marcus smiled. "Especially when better opportunities arise." The atmosphere at the table had become charged. Sophia could feel other guests noticing the tension, discreet whispers beginning to circulate. She needed to do something before the situation exploded. "If you'll excuse me," she said, rising gracefully, "I'll go to the powder room." In the hotel's luxurious bathroom, Sophia looked at herself in the mirror, trying to process what was happening. It was clear that Marcus was flirting with her, but there was something more at stake. A competition between the two men that went beyond romantic interest. When she returned to the ballroom, she found Ethan waiting in the hallway, his expression somber. "We need to talk," he said, taking her hand and guiding her to a private alcove decorated with lush plants and Victorian furniture. "Ethan, what's going on? Why is Marcus?" "Because he knows," Ethan interrupted, his hands finding her waist. "He might not have details, but he knows you mean more to me than just an efficient assistant." Sophia's heart stopped. "And do I?" Instead of answering with words, Ethan pulled her closer, their bodies fitting together perfectly. "Do you really need to ask after everything that's happened between us? After how I react to any man who looks at you?" "Ethan," she whispered, her hands resting on his chest, feeling the tense muscles under the thin fabric of his shirt. "I couldn't pretend anymore," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion, "especially not tonight. Seeing how beautiful you look, hearing Marcus make insinuations about taking you away from me." "You're jealous?" Sophia said. It wasn't a question. "Jealous?" Ethan laughed, but there was bitterness in the sound. "Sophia, jealousy doesn't begin to describe what I feel. It's possessiveness. It's the primitive need to ensure that every man in that ballroom knows you're not available." The words hit her like lightning. "And how would you do that?" The smile that crossed Ethan's face was dangerous and promising. Slowly, he raised his hands to frame her face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. "Like this," he murmured, tilting his head toward hers. The kiss was electric, months of accumulated tension exploding in a moment of pure need. Sophia melted against him, her hands wrapping around his tie, pulling him closer. He tasted like champagne and dangerous promises, and Sophia immediately knew she was lost. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. "Now," Ethan said, his thumb tracing her lower lip, "when we go back in there will be no doubt about where you belong." Sophia nodded, unable to form words. Her mind was spinning, but one thing was crystal clear. There was no going back. They had crossed the line. They had been dancing around for months. When they returned to the ballroom, Ethan kept a possessive hand on her waist, and Sophia noticed how Marcus observed the change in dynamics between them with an expression that mixed admiration and defeat. The rest of the night passed in a fog of sensations. Ethan's hand on her back during dances, the way he whispered comments in her ear that made her laugh, the burning looks they exchanged when they thought no one was watching. When the night finally came to an end, Sophia knew everything had changed irrevocably. The cat-and-mouse game they had been playing was over, and something much more powerful and dangerous had begun. And for the first time since she'd sent that photo by mistake, Sophia was completely certain she wanted to find out exactly where this would lead them. The air in the Aspen Mountains was crystal clear and invigorating, carrying the scent of pine trees and the promise of snow that still lingered on distant peaks even in May. Sophia took a deep breath as she observed the stunning landscape through the hotel room window, trying to calm the nerves that had been on edge since they boarded Ethan's private flight the morning before. The business conference had been just an excuse. They both knew it. 3 weeks had passed since the night at the plaza, and the tension between them had become almost unbearable. Each day at the office was exquisite torture of loaded glances, accidental touches that lasted seconds too long, and conversations that danced around what they really wanted to say. Sophia, Ethan's voice behind her, made her entire body tense with anticipation. She turned slowly, finding him standing at the entrance to the suite that, due to a mistake in the reservation, they had been forced to share. Ethan had traded his formal suit for more casual clothes, dark jeans, and a charcoal, button-down shirt that highlighted his eyes and hugged his broad shoulders devastatingly. There was something different about him here, away from the corporate environment. A roar, less controlled intensity. "The lectures ended earlier than expected," he said, closing the door behind him. The sound of the lock clicking echoed in the charged silence. "I thought maybe you'd like to explore the city." "Of course," Sophia agreed, though her voice came out huskier than normal. "Aspen is beautiful." They spent the afternoon walking through the charming streets of the mountain town, visiting art galleries and small boutiques. But Sophia was painfully aware of every moment, the way Ethan placed his hand on her back when guiding her through a door, how his fingers brushed hers when he pointed out something interesting, the intensity in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. During dinner at an intimate restaurant overlooking the mountains, the tension finally reached its breaking point. "We can't keep going like this," Ethan said suddenly, placing his fork on his barely touched plate. The soft lights of the restaurant created shadows that accentuated the angles of his face, and Sophia could see something vulnerable in his expression. "Going like what?" she asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. "Pretending there isn't this connection between us, that I don't think about you every moment, that I don't replay that damn photo every time I close my eyes." His voice was low, intense, loaded with a raw honesty that made her tremble. "That I don't think about you every moment." Sophia felt her heart race. "To mark my territory. To mark my territory. To make it clear that you're mine." The raw possessiveness in his voice made something primitive awaken deep in Sophia's belly. "Yours? Mine," he repeated, his hand finding hers on the table. The touch was electric, sending waves of heat through her entire body. "If you want to be," Sophia looked at their intertwined hands, then back at his eyes. "And if I do," the smile that crossed Ethan's face was predatory and promising. "Then we stop fighting against this." They barely touched dessert. The walk back to the hotel was torture filled with anticipation, each step loaded with the promise of what was to come. In the elevator, Ethan positioned himself behind her, so close she could feel the heat of his body, his breath brushing her neck. "Sophia," he murmured, his voice rough, "if you don't want this, you need to tell me now, because once we go into that room." She turned to face him, seeing the fierce intensity in his eyes, the control he was exercising to give her the choice. "I want this," she whispered. "I want you." The words were like a switch. As soon as the elevator doors opened, Ethan took her hand and guided her down the hallway with an urgency that made her pulse race. At the suite door, his fingers trembled slightly as he inserted the keycard, and Sophia found that touch of vulnerability devastatingly attractive. Once inside, they looked at each other for a charged moment. The city sparkled through the panoramic windows, but Sophia only had eyes for the man in front of her. "That photo," Ethan said, approaching slowly, "hasn't left my mind since the moment I saw it." "It was meant for Olivia," Sophia said, but her voice failed when he stopped inches from her. "But it wasn't for Olivia," he murmured, his hands finding her waist. "It was for me, and part of you knew that." Sophia couldn't deny it. Maybe, he repeated, a smile touching his lips. "Sophia, do you have any idea how many nights I've stayed awake thinking about you, imagining what it would be like to touch you, kiss you, have you completely?" The words set her on fire. "Show me," she whispered. This time, when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no concern about being discovered. It was pure need. Months of accumulated tension exploding in an avalanche of desire. Sophia melted against him, her hands exploring the muscles of his back through his shirt, delighting in his strength, his solidity. Ethan pressed her against the wall, his lips finding her throat, leaving a trail of kisses that made her gasp. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined," he murmured against her skin. "Ethan," she panted, her hands finding the buttons of his shirt. "Please." He pulled back enough to look into her eyes, searching for any sign of hesitation. Finding only desire mirroring his own, he lifted her up, carrying her to the bedroom. The night that followed was a revelation. Away from professional masks, Ethan was intense, passionate, surprisingly tender. He worshipped her with a reverence that left her breathless, whispering confessions against her skin that made her understand this was much more than physical attraction. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this," he murmured against her lips in the silent darkness of dawn. Sophia nestled against his chest. "How long?" she asked, tracing lazy circles on his torso. "Since the first day you walked into my office," he admitted. "You were nervous, trying so hard to impress, and all I could think about was how expressive your eyes were, how your smile lit up the entire room." Sophia raised her head to look at him. "Really? Really?" He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "That photo was just the catalyst. I was already lost long before. Why didn't you say anything before?" Ethan sighed. "Fear of complicating things, of ruining what we had professionally, of you not feeling the same." He pulled her closer. "And because once I had you, I knew I'd never be able to let you go." The words sent a shiver through her. "And now," he said, rolling so she was beneath him, his eyes burning with a possessiveness that made her tremble. "You're mine completely." When Sophia woke the next morning, the first rays of sun were painting the mountains gold. Ethan was still sleeping. One possessive arm around her waist, his face relaxed in a way she had never seen before. There was a vulnerability in his sleeping features that made her heart contract with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. Carefully, so as not to wake him, she traced the line of his jaw with her fingers, marveling at the rough texture of his stubble. How had they gotten here? How had a simple sending mistake led to this? To this perfect moment suspended in time. "Good morning." His husky voice made her smile. "Good morning," she whispered back. Ethan opened his eyes, and the intensity she saw there made her catch her breath. "No regrets." "About what? About us? About this?" He gestured to the space between them. Sophia leaned down and kissed him softly. "Not one." The smile that lit up his face was devastating. "Then we need to talk about what happens when we get back." Reality slowly crept in. Washington, the office, the appearances they would have to maintain. "What do you want to happen?" Ethan sat up, pulling her with him. "I want you, Sophia. Not just here. Not just for one night. I want everything. The dinners, the weekends, waking up with you every morning." His voice became more intense. "I want you to be truly mine." Sophia's heart raced. "And work. People will talk. Let them talk," he said fiercely. "I don't care about office politics or what people think. People will talk." Sophia looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity there, the determination. "It won't be easy. The best things never are." Ethan smiled, kissing her forehead. "But it's worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for." As they prepared to leave Aspen later that day, Sophia knew she was returning to Washington as a completely different person. The woman who had sent a photo by mistake was gone. In her place was someone who had found something she didn't even know she was looking for. A love that was both gentle and fierce, protective and liberating. And for the first time in her life, Sophia felt truly alive. The Caldwell consulting office, the Monday following their return from Aspen, looked the same as always. The same hum of computers, the same conversations over coffee, the same light filtered through glass windows. But for Sophia, everything had fundamentally changed. Every surface, every hallway now carried the memory of what had happened between her and Ethan. And she felt like she was walking through a familiar world that had been secretly transformed. Sophia arrived early as always, but this time her nerves had a different quality. It was no longer the anxiety of a woman trying to avoid her boss after an embarrassment. It was the electric anticipation of a woman who had spent the last 3 days discovering exactly what it meant to be desired by Ethan Caldwell. She was organizing the morning documents when she heard the familiar footsteps in the hallway. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to maintain a professional expression when Ethan appeared at her desk. "Good morning, Sophia," he said, his voice carefully neutral, but she could see the heat burning in his eyes. "I hope you had a good weekend. Very productive." "Thank you, Mr. Duty." "Caldwell?" she replied, but there was a note of amusement in her voice that made his lips curve almost imperceptibly. "Great. I need you to review these contracts before 10, he said, placing a folder on her desk. When their fingers touched briefly during the transfer, Sophia felt that familiar electric current. "And Sophia." "Yes, sir. Excellent work at the Aspen conference. Your contribution was invaluable." There were so many layers of meaning in those words that Sophia had to bite her lower lip to hide her smile. "It was a pleasure to help Mr. Caldwell." He watched her for a moment longer than professionally necessary before heading to his office. Sophia watched him leave, noticing the casual confidence in his steps, the way his suit hugged his broad shoulders. 3 days ago, she had explored every inch of that body, and now she had to pretend he was just her boss. The morning passed in a careful dance of forced professionalism. They communicated through formal emails and memos, but Sophia could feel Ethan's eyes on her every time she passed his office. During the 10 meeting, he maintained a neutral expression, but when their gazes met, there was a warmth there that made her stomach flip. At lunchtime, Sophia found a small, discreet envelope on her desk. Inside, a simple card with Ethan's elegant handwriting, "Conference Room C, 1:12:30. Need to discuss some details from the Aspen report." Sophia looked around to make sure no one had noticed, then discreetly slipped the card into her purse. At 12:25, she headed to the conference room at the end of the hallway, a small, rarely used room that was far from the main office traffic. Ethan was already there, standing by the window with his back to the door. When he turned, the intensity in his eyes made her stop mid-step. "Close the door," he said quietly. Sophia obeyed, turning the key in the lock. The sound echoed in the charged silence. "This is crazy," she whispered, but there was excitement in her voice. "It's necessary," Ethan replied, approaching, Because if I have to spend another hour pretending you're just my assistant, I'm going to lose my mind. In 2 steps he was in front of her, his hands finding her waist. I missed you, he murmured against her lips. It's only been a few hours, Sophia protested, but melted against him. Her few hours too many, he said, kissing her with an urgency that made her tremble. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. Ethan, if someone sees us, no one will see us, he reassured her, though his eyes were alert. We have 15 minutes before your absence is noticed. They spent those 15 minutes exploring the limits of their new reality. Whispered conversations about how they would keep the secret, stolen kisses that left them wanting more, and establishing coded signals they would use in the office. When I loosen my tie during a meeting, it means I want to see you in my office after hours, Ethan explained, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. When you wear that deep plum lipstick, I'll know you're thinking about me. And if I can't wait until after hours, Sophia asked, surprising herself with her own boldness. The smile that crossed his face was sinful. Then you send me an email with urgent in the subject line. I'll find a reason to call you to my office. The weeks that followed turned into an elaborate dance of shared secrets. Sophia became fluent in the silent language they developed. The way Ethan's eyes darkened when he wanted to touch her, how his hand lingered on hers when passing documents, the almost imperceptible smiles they exchanged when no one was looking. They met at his penthouse 3 nights a week, always careful not to leave the office together. Sophia learned that Ethan cooked surprisingly well, that he had an impressive collection of jazz vinyl, and that in intimate moments away from professional masks, he was incredibly tender and vulnerable. Sometimes I can't believe this is happening, Sophia murmured one night, nestled against his chest as they watched the city lights through the panoramic windows of his apartment. What exactly? Ethan asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare arm. Us. This 3 months ago, you were this intimidating boss who barely spoke to me. And now you're the most important person in my life. He finished, his voice serious. Sophia, I need you to know this isn't just physical for me. It's not just an affair. Sophia raised her head to look at him. What is it then? It's love, he said simply, and the words hit her like lightning. I love you, Sophia, completely, irrevocably. Tears glistened in her eyes. Ethan, you don't have to say it back if you're not ready, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. I love you too, she whispered, and saw something transform in his face. I've loved you for weeks, but I was afraid to admit it. The kiss he gave her was different from all the others, full of promise, of future, of possibilities neither had dared imagine before. But with the confession came new pressure. At the office, Sophia found herself looking at Ethan with an intensity she feared was obvious. During meetings, she had to fight the urge to smile when he spoke, remembering how that deep voice whispered declarations of love in her ear. You're glowing, Olivia commented one afternoon, studying Sophia with curiosity. Did something happen? You've been different these past few weeks. Different how? Sophia asked, trying to keep her voice casual. More happy, confident, like you have a wonderful secret. Olivia smiled. Is there a man? Sophia felt heat rise up her neck. Why would you think that? Because you have that glow that women in love have. So, who is he? Someone I know. Before Sophia could answer, Ethan passed by them in the hallway. He greeted both politely, but Sophia didn't miss how his eyes lingered on her a second longer, or how his hand briefly brushed her back as he passed. Olivia watched the interaction with growing interest. Interesting? What's interesting? Sophia asked, trying to sound disinterested. Nothing. Olivia smiled mysteriously. Just interesting. That night at his apartment, Sophia told Ethan about the conversation with Olivia. Do you think she suspects? She asked, sitting in the kitchen while he prepared dinner. Probably, Ethan said, cutting vegetables with military precision. Olivia is observant, but even if she suspects, she's not the gossiping type. What if others start to notice? Jordan has already commented a few times that it seems like you treat me differently. Ethan stopped cutting, his shoulders tensing. Is Jordan still bothering you? Not exactly. He's persistent, but respectful. Sophia approached, placing her hands on his tense shoulders. I'm more worried about what will happen when people find out. Because they will find out. Eventually, Ethan turned in her arms. And when they do, what if they think I got my position for her other reasons? What if they question every promotion, every project you give me? Sophia, he said, framing her face with his hands, you're the most competent person I've ever met. Anyone who questions your qualifications is an idiot, but people will question, you know they will. Ethan sighed. Then we'll deal with it when it happens together. What if the board decides it's inappropriate? What if they fire me? Then we'll find a solution, he said fiercely. But I won't give you up because of office politics or other people's opinions. You're worth any complication. Sophia leaned against him, discouraged. Sometimes I wonder if it wouldn't be easier if that photo had never been sent. Easier, maybe. Ethan agreed, kissing the top of her head, but not better. Never better. As they danced slowly in the kitchen with soft jazz playing in the background, Sophia allowed herself to momentarily forget the complications. Here, in Ethan's arms, away from curious stares and corporate politics, everything seemed possible, but part of her knew their glass reality couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the real world would invade their perfect bubble, and when it did, they would discover if the love they had found was strong enough to survive the storm that would surely come. For now, though, she was content to live in these stolen moments, these whispered secrets, this promise that regardless of what the future brought, they would face it together. 6 months had passed since Aspen, and Sophia had grown accustomed to the delicate dance of keeping her relationship with Ethan secret. Fall had arrived in Washington, D.C., painting the city in golden and red tones, and there was a different energy in the air, something Sophia couldn't identify, but that left her with a constant sense of expectation. It was a Tuesday in October when everything changed. Sophia arrived at the office as usual, greeted Olivia at reception with her habitual morning smile, and headed to her desk. But when she sat down, something immediately caught her attention. In the center of her desk, perfectly aligned with her other documents, was an elegant ivory envelope with her name written in Ethan's familiar handwriting. Her heart raced. They had been extremely careful in recent months. No notes in the office, no personal communication that could be intercepted. What could be so important that Ethan would risk leaving something physical on her desk? Sophia looked around to make sure no one was watching before carefully opening the envelope. Inside, she found something that made her catch her breath. A copy of the same bikini photo she had sent by mistake 6 months ago, but there was something written on the back in Ethan's elegant handwriting. This photo changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. It changed me from a man who lived only for work into someone who finally understands what it means to love completely. Sophia Bennett, will you marry me? Check your top right drawer, E. Sophia's hands trembled as she reread the words, her heart beating so hard she was sure the entire office could hear it. Slowly, as if she were in a dream, she opened the top right drawer of her desk. There, nestled in a small midnight, blue velvet box, was the most beautiful ring she had ever seen. A classic solitaire with a diamond that captured and reflected all the morning light, surrounded by small diamonds that sparkled like stars. It was elegant, timeless, perfect. Exactly what she would have chosen if she had dared dream of this moment. "Oh my God," she whispered, covering her mouth with her free hand. "Sophia, are you okay?" Olivia's voice made her look up quickly. Her friend was standing beside her desk, looking concerned. "You went completely pale." Sophia stammered quickly, closing the drawer and turning the paper face down. "I'm fine. Just important documents." Olivia studied her with perceptive eyes. Important documents that make you look like you've seen a ghost. Before Sophia could answer, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Ethan was standing near her desk, impeccable as always, in a charcoal suit. But there was something different in his posture, a tension, a vulnerability that only she could detect. "Good morning, ladies," he said, his voice perfectly controlled. "Sophia, when you have a moment, I need to discuss some details about the Morrison project." Sophia looked at him, trying to process what had just happened. In his eyes, she saw anxiety, hope, and a silent question that made her realize he was waiting for an answer. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell," she managed to say. "Right now, when it's convenient for you," he said, but there was an intensity in his voice that made it clear that convenient meant immediately. Olivia looked between the two with growing interest. "Well, I'll leave you to discuss business," she said with a smile that suggested she suspected there was much more happening than project discussions. Sophia followed Ethan to his office on legs that felt like jelly. As soon as the door closed behind them, he turned to face her, and she saw all the emotions he had been hiding: nervousness, hope, love, and a vulnerability that made her want to cry. "You found it," he said. It wasn't a question. "Ethan," she whispered, feeling tears glisten in her eyes. This is crazy," he suggested, approaching. "Hasty, complicated, perfect," she said, and saw relief flood his face. "It's perfect." In 2 steps, he was in front of her. his hands framing her face. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes," she whispered. And then he was kissing her, lifting her off the ground and spinning her, both laughing through tears. "I love you so much," he murmured against her lips. "When I think about how I almost lost you because of stupid protocols and fear of complications, but you didn't lose me," Sophia said, her hands wrapping around his tie. "I'm here. I'm saying yes." Ethan set her down gently, then knelt, taking the ring box from his pocket. "Sophia Bennett," he said formally, his eyes never leaving hers. "Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she said through tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." His hands trembled slightly as he slipped the ring onto her finger, and Sophia marveled at how it fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for her. "How did you know my size?" she asked, admiring how the diamond caught the light. Ethan smiled. "I borrowed that ring you wear on your pinky so they could calculate the correct size. When 3 weeks ago, when you were sleeping," he admitted, "I've been planning this for a month." Sophia looked at him with admiration. "A month and I didn't suspect anything." "You were distracted," he said, with a mischievous smile. "I had to work hard to keep you occupied." She laughed, remembering the past few weeks and how Ethan had been particularly attentive, taking her to spontaneous dinners and romantic weekends. "You were distracting me on purpose." "Guilty as charged," he confessed, pulling her into his arms again. "I couldn't risk you finding out before it was time." "And the photo?" Sophia asked. "Why use it?" Ethan's smile became softer, more intimate, "Because that's where it all began. That photo wasn't just the mistake that brought us together, it was the moment my life really started. I wanted you to know that I don't regret anything." Not for a second, Sophia felt her heart expand. With so much love it hurt. "I don't regret anything either. Not even the complications that will come?" he asked, his eyes serious. "I wanted you to know that I don't regret anything. I don't regret anything either." The kiss he gave her was loaded with promise and gratitude. When they separated, both were grinning like idiots. "So," Ethan said, adjusting the tie Sophia had messed up, "how are we going to tell everyone?" "Well," Sophia said, looking at the ring sparkling on her hand, "something tells me it won't be a secret for much longer." As if summoned by her words, there was a knock on the door. "Ethan, is Sophia in there?" "There's an important call for her online, too," Olivia shouted through the door. Sophia and Ethan exchanged glances. "She already suspects something," Sophia whispered. "Olivia was always smart," Ethan agreed, ready to face the crowd. Sophia looked at the ring, then at the man who had turned her world upside down in the best possible way. "With you, I'm ready for anything." When they left the office together, Sophia noticed how Olivia immediately focused on the way Ethan kept a protective hand on her back, how their eyes sparkled, and especially how something new and shiny decorated her left hand. "Holy shit," Olivia murmured, her eyes widening. "Sophia Bennett, is that what I think it is?" Sophia looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly, then extended her hand to Olivia. "It's exactly what you think it is." Olivia's scream echoed through the entire office, making all heads turn. Within minutes, they were surrounded by curious colleagues, all wanting to see the ring, hear the story, and express surprise that ranged from genuinely happy to completely shocked. "I knew it." Jordan appeared in the growing circle, smiling broadly. "You two have been obviously in love for months. I thought you'd never admit it." "Obviously?" Sophia asked, surprised. To anyone paying attention, Jordan laughed. "The way you looked at each other. How Ethan got possessive whenever someone talked to you. How you lit up every time he entered the room. Please." It was like watching a romantic soap opera in slow motion. Sophia and Ethan exchanged amused glances. Apparently, they hadn't been as discreet as they thought. As the afternoon progressed and news spread through the office, Sophia marveled at the reactions. There were some surprised expressions and some whispers she suspected weren't entirely positive, but most people seemed genuinely happy for them. "So," Olivia said later, when the excitement had died down and they were alone, "when did this really start? And don't give me that story about it just happening." Sophia smiled, twisting the ring on her finger. "Remember that bikini photo I promised you 6 months ago? The one you never sent me?" Olivia frowned. "What does that have to do with?" Understanding dawned on Olivia's face slowly. "Sophia Bennett, you wouldn't dare." "I sent it to the wrong person," Sophia confessed, unable to hide her smile. "And it turns out it was exactly the right person." Olivia stared at her for a moment, then started laughing. You're telling me your romantic fairy tale started because you accidentally sent a bikini photo to your boss. That's exactly what I'm telling you. That is, Olivia shook her head, still laughing. The most ridiculously romantic thing I've ever heard. Only you, Sophia, only you could turn the biggest professional embarrassment in history into a marriage proposal. As Sophia looked across the office to where Ethan was in an impromptu meeting with some directors, probably explaining the situation, she reflected on the surreal journey that had brought her here 6 months ago. A simple slip of the finger had changed everything. Today, that same mistake had transformed into the promise of a future she had never dared imagine. The ring sparkled on her hand like a constant reminder that sometimes life's best moments come from the most unexpected mistakes. And when Ethan looked at her through the glass of his office and smiled, a smile that was just for her, loaded with love and promises of tomorrow, Sophia knew that every moment of uncertainty had been worth it to get here. The Connecticut estate was bathed in the golden light of a spring late afternoon, the meticulously maintained gardens of the Caldwell mansion, creating a fairy tale setting. Sophia stopped before the antique mirror in the room that had been prepared for her, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The wedding dress, a creation in silk and lace that embraced her curves with timeless elegance, transformed her into something ethereal, almost unreal. "You look absolutely stunning," Olivia said behind her, her eyes shining with unshed tears. As maid of honor, she had been a constant force of support during the 4 months of wedding preparations, especially when the inevitable complications at the office began to arise. "I'm nervous," Sophia admitted, her hands trembling slightly as she touched the sapphire necklace, an heirloom from Ethan's grandmother that he had insisted she wear. "What if I trip? What if I forget my vows? What if—" "Sophia," Olivia interrupted gently, placing her hands on her shoulders. "You're marrying the love of your life. A man who looks at you like you're the most precious thing in the universe. Nothing else matters." Outside the window, Sophia could see guests gathering in the garden where the ceremony would take place. It was an intimate celebration. Only 50 people, but each one carefully chosen. Work colleagues who had become true friends, Ethan's family, who had welcomed her with open arms, and her own loved ones, who had traveled to be present on the most important day of her life. A gentle knock on the door made both of them turn. "Come in," Olivia called. To Sophia's surprise, it was Jordan who appeared, elegant in his dark suit, carrying a small bouquet of white lilies. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," he said with a genuine smile. "I wanted to deliver this personally and give my congratulations." Sophia accepted the flowers, touched by the gesture. In the months since the engagement, Jordan had proven to be a true friend, setting aside any romantic disappointment he might have felt to genuinely support her happiness. "Jordan, this is beautiful." "Thank you. Actually," he said, a mischievous expression crossing his face, "I came here with a confession. Remember how everyone was surprised when you announced your engagement? How everyone pretended they didn't know there was something between you two?" Sophia laughed. "Pretended is the right word. Apparently, we were terrible at hiding it. Well, it turns out some of us didn't just know. We were betting," Jordan confessed, provoking a surprised cry from Olivia. "Betting?" Sophia repeated, incredulous. "An office pool about when you would finally admit your relationship. I said it would be before Christmas. Olivia bet on Valentine's Day, but Roberto from security, that brilliant man, bet it would be April 1st. He almost won." "You were betting on our love life?" Sophia asked, but she was laughing. With the greatest affection and support, Jordan assured, "All of us wanted you to get together. It was painfully obvious you were perfect for each other." Olivia shook her head, amused. "And who won the pool?" "Technically, no one since you got engaged in October, so we decided to donate the money to charity in your name." Jordan smiled. "We chose an organization that helps young professionals seemed appropriate." Sophia felt her heart warm. That's incredibly sweet." "Well," Jordan kissed her cheek chastely, "you deserve all the happiness in the world. Ethan is a lucky man." After Jordan left, Sophia sat for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what was about to happen. In an hour, she would be Mrs. Caldwell, the woman who had sent a photo by mistake and changed the course of 2 lives forever. "Time to go," Olivia announced, checking her watch. "Your future husband is waiting." The walk to the garden felt like a dream. Sophia passed the elaborate floral arrangements, the chairs decorated with silk boughs, and finally reached the improvised altar under an arch of white roses and green foliage. but she barely noticed the decorative details. All her attention was focused on the man waiting for her at the altar. Ethan was devastatingly elegant in his tuxedo, but it was his eyes that made her momentarily stop. There was so much love, so much reverence in his expression, that Sophia felt tears threaten her carefully applied makeup. When their gazes met, he smiled. That smile that was only hers, and Sophia knew she was exactly where she should be. The ceremony passed like a liquid dream. Sophia was vaguely conscious of the officiant talking about love and commitment, the soft laughter of guests, the perfume of flowers in the warm spring air, but her consciousness was centered on the man in front of her, on the promises they were about to make to each other. Now Ethan and Sophia have written their own vows, the officiant announced. Ethan took her hands, his fingers intertwining with hers. For a moment, he simply looked at her as if he were engraving the moment in memory. Sophia, he began, his voice clear and strong. 6 months ago, you sent a photo to the wrong number. At the time, I thought it was just an embarrassing mistake we would both try to forget. I couldn't have been more wrong. Soft laughter spread through the audience. That photo wasn't a mistake. It was the universe conspiring to bring us together. It was the moment my life really began. You transformed my ordered and controlled world into something beautiful, chaotic, and infinitely better. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness. That love isn't a distraction from success. It's what makes success meaningful. Sophia felt tears streaming down her face, no longer caring about her makeup. I promise to love you, not just in the easy moments, but especially when things get complicated. I promise to protect our love against anyone who questions our unconventional story. I promise to never forget that the best decision I ever made was responding to that photo instead of just deleting it. His voice broke slightly on the last sentence. I promise to be worthy of the most perfect accident of my life. When it was Sophia's turn, she took a deep breath, looking at the man who had changed everything. Ethan, she began, her voice trembling with emotion. When I sent that photo to the wrong number, I was looking for approval from a friend. I had no idea I was sending my heart to the person who would take care of it forever. She paused, collecting her thoughts. You taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing despite fear. You showed me that true love is worth fighting for, even when it seems impossible, even when circumstances are complicated. Sophia smiled through her tears. I promise to never be ashamed of our story. I promise to laugh with you about how we started and marvel at where we've arrived. I promise to be your partner in every sense, in business, in life, in love. Her voice strengthened, and I promise to always double-check the recipient before sending photos, unless it's to you. The audience exploded in laughter, and even Ethan couldn't maintain his serious composure. The rest of the ceremony passed quickly. Rings exchanged the "You may kiss the bride," that resulted in a kiss that made guests burst into applause, and finally their presentation as Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell. The reception was a celebration of pure joy. Under fairy lights hung between trees, guests danced, laughed, and shared stories. But it was during the speeches that the real magic happened. Olivia stood first, elegant in her emerald dress. I've known Sophia for 10 years, she began, and I've never seen her as happy as she's been these past months. Ethan, you brought a light to her eyes that I didn't know was missing. But it was during the speeches that the real magic happened. She raised her glass to happy accidents and love that finds a way. When Jordan stood to speak, Sophia prepared for more embarrassment. As many of you know, Jordan began with a mischievous smile. I tried to win Sophia over when I started working at the company. Fortunately for everyone involved, I failed miserably because watching Ethan and Sophia fight their feelings for each other was better than any entertainment I could have asked for. He looked directly at the couple. You two were made for each other in ways it took you months to realize. Ethan, you became a better boss, a better man because of her love. Sophia, you found your voice, your confidence, your power because of his love. Together, you're unstoppable. But it was Ethan's father's speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. My son has always been driven, focused, sometimes even isolated in his pursuit of perfection, the older man said, his voice heavy with emotion. I worried he would never learn to live, only to work. Then Sophia entered his life, or rather stumbled into his life, through the most fortunate mistake in history. He smiled at Sophia. You didn't just capture my son's heart. You humanized him. You taught him to laugh, to be spontaneous, to value small moments as much as big achievements. For that, Sophia, our family will be eternally grateful. When it came time for Ethan's speech, he stood, helping Sophia stand with him. I won't make a long speech, he said, his voice carrying over the silent garden. "I just want everyone to know that today isn't just about Sophia and me promising to love each other. It's proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected mistakes." He looked at Sophia. "My beautiful wife says she'll double-check recipients in the future, but I hope she doesn't change completely, because a woman who has enough courage to send the wrong photo to the right person is exactly the kind of woman I want by my side forever." The kiss he gave her was soft, reverent, full of promise. Later that night, when the last guests had departed and they were alone in the garden, lit only by fairy lights, Sophia and Ethan danced slowly to one last song. "Mrs. Caldwell," Ethan murmured against her ear. "How does that sound?" "Perfect," she whispered back. "Absolutely perfect." As they looked at the stars through the trees, Sophia reflected on the surreal journey that had brought them here. One mistake, one moment of vulnerability, one photo sent to the wrong recipient, and their lives had been irrevocably changed for the better. "No regrets?" Ethan asked, as if he could read her thoughts. Sophia leaned back to look into his eyes. Eyes she now knew in every mood, that she had seen darken with desire, sparkle with humor, and soften with love. "Not one," she said, "not a single one." And dancing under the stars with the man who had started as her intimidating boss and become her husband, Sophia knew that some mistakes are exactly what they're supposed to be. The beginning of everything beautiful. The bridal suite was bathed in the soft light of aromatic candles, rose petals scattered across the king-size bed, and a bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket. But Sophia barely noticed the carefully arranged romantic details. Her attention was completely focused on what she had discovered on the dresser when they entered the room. There, in an elegant silver frame, was the photo, the same bikini selfie she had sent by mistake almost a year ago. Now framed alongside a photo of the moment she had found the ring in her desk drawer at the office, the two images, side by side, told the complete story of their journey. From embarrassing mistake to true love. "You kept it," she whispered, picking up the frame with trembling hands. "All this time you kept the photo." Ethan approached from behind, wrapping her in his arms, still wearing the shirt and pants from his tuxedo, the bow tie loose around his neck. "Of course I kept it," he murmured against her loose hair. "It was the moment my real life began." Sophia turned in his arms, still holding the frame. But why frame it? Why put it here? The smile that crossed his face was tender and slightly mischievous. "Because I want us to always remember where we started. How chance, fate, or simply dumb luck brought us together." He touched the frame gently. "This photo isn't just an image, Sophia, it's evidence that life's best moments sometimes come from the most unexpected mistakes." Sophia felt tears glisten in her eyes. "When I think about how I almost didn't send that photo, how I hesitated for a few seconds before hitting send." "But you did send it," Ethan said, taking the frame from her hands and carefully placing it back on the dresser. "And even though it was to the wrong number, it was to exactly the right person." They kissed slowly, savoring the moment, the realization that they were now husband and wife, that they had a whole life ahead to create more memories, more stories to tell. "You know what's funny?" Sophia said when they separated, her hands playing with the buttons of his shirt. "That morning when I sent the photo, I was feeling so confident, so satisfied with myself. I never imagined I was about to change the entire trajectory of my life. And I was in the office reviewing reports, completely focused on work as always," Ethan recalled, slowly unbuttoning her wedding dress. "When my phone buzzed, I thought it was just another work message. I never could have imagined I was about to see the most beautiful woman in the world, and your first reaction was to respond so professionally." Sophia laughed, letting the dress slip down her body. "So cold and formal?" "Because I was panicking," Ethan confessed. "Also laughing. I had no idea how to respond to something like that. You had just turned my world upside down with a single photo, and I was trying to maintain some semblance of control." "Control," Sophia repeated, now wearing only the delicate lingerie she had chosen, especially for this night. "You always had so much control over everything. It must have been terrible to realize you had no control over me." Ethan's eyes darkened as he watched her. "I had no control over you, over my feelings, over anything. For the first time in my life, I was completely vulnerable." He pulled her closer, and it was liberating. The night that followed was a celebration of love, passion, and the special intimacy that exists between two people who have chosen to commit to each other forever. They made love with the urgency of newlyweds and the tenderness of souls who knew each other deeply, whispering promises and declarations that only they would hear. Later, when they were lying intertwined, Sophia traced lazy circles on Ethan's chest, still marveling at the fact that he was her husband. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, kissing the top of her head. "How everything changed. A year ago, I was just Sophia Bennett, administrative assistant who barely talked to her boss. Now I'm Sophia Caldwell, married to the love of my life, with a story that seems like it came from a romance novel." "Sophia Caldwell," Ethan repeated as if testing the sound. "I like how that sounds." "Me too," she smiled. "We have the rest of our lives for you to get used to it," he said. "Sophia Caldwell. A year ago, I was just Sophia Bennett, administrative assistant who barely talked to her boss." "Ethan, do you ever wonder what our life would be like if I hadn't sent that photo? If we had continued just as boss and employee?" Ethan was silent for a moment, considering. Ethan repeated as if testing the sound. "Would have found a way, maybe not in that specific manner, but I believe true love always finds a way." "Do you really believe that with you?" "I believe it completely. That photo was just the catalyst. What we feel for each other, the connection we have, that would have emerged eventually, one way or another." Sophia propped herself up on her elbow to look at him better. "So, you don't think it was just luck?" "I think it was destiny disguised as luck," Ethan said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "The universe knew we needed each other, so it created a situation that would make it impossible to ignore that truth." "Do you really believe that with you?" "I believe it completely. A year ago, I was just Sophia Bennett, administrative assistant who barely talked to her boss. It's the only one that makes sense." Ethan smiled. "Because the odds were astronomical." "Do you really believe that with you?" "I believe it completely. Me being available to see the message immediately. It's the only one that makes sense." Ethan smiled. "When you put it like that, it really sounds like destiny disguised as luck." Sophia repeated thoughtfully. "Both of us being in an emotional place where we could be open to something unexpected." Ethan was in the shower, getting ready for another day at the office, where they now worked as an even more efficient team without needing to hide their feelings. You choosing exactly the wrong number. It was one of those moments of pure happiness she had learned to treasure, simple moments made precious by the love that surrounded them. "What are you smiling about?" Ethan asked, appearing in the kitchen with damp hair, adjusting his tie. "Just this," Sophia gestured around. "Us, or life. How perfect it is, even when it's ordinary." Ethan leaned down to kiss her, the scent of his aftershave familiar and comforting. "Nothing about our life is ordinary, Mrs. Caldwell. We started with a photo sent by mistake and built an empire of love." "An empire of love?" Sophia laughed. "You're getting poetic in your old age, Mr. Caldwell. You inspire me," he said simply, stealing a sip of her coffee. "You always inspire me." As they prepared to leave the house together, another small change that had emerged naturally after the wedding, Sophia picked up her phone to check for any important messages. "OM party last night," she said, scrolling through the images. "Want to see?" "Sure," Ethan said, looking over her shoulder. Sophia started choosing the best photos to show, then stopped, a mischievous expression crossing her face. "Sophia." Ethan noticed the change. "What is it?" "Nothing," she said innocently, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Just I have a really cute photo I want to show you." "Then show me." "Sophia." Ethan noticed the change. Sophia started choosing the best photos to show. "It's more nostalgic that way." Ethan's eyes widened with understanding and amusement. "Sophia Bennett Caldwell. You wouldn't dare." "Wouldn't I?" she challenged, already typing quickly on her phone. Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at her, then at the phone, then back at her, shaking his head with fond exasperation. "Some habits never change," he murmured, but he was smiling as he checked the message. The photo she had sent was innocent enough, a selfie of her in the kitchen, radiant with happiness, wearing one of his dress shirts over her pajamas. But attached was a message that made him laugh out loud. "Wrong number again, Mr. Caldwell. Hope you don't mind the mistake. Wrong number again, Mr. You know what? I'm going to reply," he asked. He looked at her, then at the phone, then back at her, shaking his head with fond exasperation. Ethan looked up at her, and the love in his eyes was so intense it took her breath away. "Best wrong number ever. Caldwell, best wrong number ever." The attachment she never intended to send had become the ticket to the love of her lifetime. "Caldwell, you know what? I'm going to reply," he asked. And as they kissed in their sun-filled kitchen, surrounded by the life they'd built together, Sophia thought about how a simple thumb slip had led to this, to love, to laughter, to a partnership that was stronger than anything she'd ever imagined possible. It had been exactly the right number at exactly the right time to exactly the right person, but now she knew it hadn't been the wrong number after all. Sometimes the moments that change our lives come disguised as our greatest fears. Sophia thought she had made the most embarrassing mistake of her career, but she had actually found the love of her life. A photo sent to the wrong number became the ticket to a future she never dared dream of. Because in the end, maybe there are no wrong numbers, just destinies waiting to be discovered. And perhaps deep down, this story also speaks about us, about how our mistakes can be exactly what we needed to find where we truly belong.